So this is a review of the sound design in Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Innocence. It's a 2014 American black comedy film. It's got a unique style. It's presented as being a single shot, in the style sort of Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, which I believe had one cut in it, and I think this has more. They say they're around 10-minute takes, so there's a few in there. I found that both sort of good and bad. It was very cool and very refreshing, but it also meant that at points I was looking for it. If there was ever a still shot with nothing in it, or where the camera moves quickly, I was looking for where it's got a cut there somewhere, whether it's put in by CGI or not. But very interesting nonetheless, and extremely rare in filmmaking, especially at, over an hour in length. It's presented being very raw. It's got raw acting because they're playing on the stage and off the stage. So generally it works quite well with seeing the on-stage characters being more intense and over-the-top versions most of the time, especially in the case of Michael Keaton. And there's multiple levels to the story, the cinematography, and just in general, all of it. You can see it as many sort of levels of satire and parody of the actors who are in it, the situation they're going through in their lives and in the actual film, and what that represents. And it's nice because it's quite complicated, and there's lots that you can draw from it, and quite a few ways you can approach it as well. So I'm sort of not really decided on what it represents and everything, but it is just a brilliant roller coaster of different people going through very different things at different times, and especially with the main character's psycho state and what that means, and the Birdman visually and sonically, and its presence in the film and what that means is just, it's fun to think about, and a really nice refreshing bit to some of the other films that I've seen in the last year. So the sound sort of follows this style, it's raw most of the time. There's very little affecting and panning. It keeps it sort of straight down the line. None of the Foley stupidly over the top. Nothing is really that over the top, but you sort of hear it creep in and out a little bit. So every now and then there's a lot going on in the background, whereas other times, even if it's on stage in the theatre, the sound really draws you into one specific character or what's being said, and there's really good flow to it that sort of moves, makes you aware of it and then disappears again, and makes you aware of it and disappears again. And I've seen a quote saying that they tried to do this on purpose, but also tried to do it where it counteracts whether it's real or not. So the more real it is, the more raw the sound's going to be, but the more inside the mind, the more this raw style comes in. So it changes between the two to go with the story, which I thought was quite interesting, that rather than going with it as some of the visuals do, obviously with the Birdman and some of the flying bits and the ending, the sound takes the opposite approach. So the more crazy it's getting and more inside the head, the more stripped back it will be, which is interesting, which works both ways really, because you've got the one hand where it's like actually in their mind, so why would it have loads going on? It would all be quite individual to them, but at the same time it's less cinematic. So very interesting there. The music's pretty incredible. It bounces up and down almost literally, with very heavy percussion. Even when there isn't drums in there, it's usually piano or more of the staccato-y instruments, which is cool, and it gives it a lot of movement. And they were talking, the people who recorded them, about detuning them as much as possible to make them gritty and angry and more sort of replicating the mindset of Michael Keaton's character and re-recording them, because there's at least 2 occasions where the drums are on screen, so it's inside the film, which is thoroughly interesting. It would be a pan across the street, or they walk past and there's a guy there drumming, and you can hear it getting quieter and louder and louder, and that was done on set, but the soundtrack wasn't finalised, so they had to, with their in-studio drummer, get them to write the soundtrack and also include the point where he's on screen, so that no matter what happens before or after, it's in sync on the screen, which is just fascinating from a composition point of view, that already existed and it had to be added afterwards. That's pretty insane. But they sound brilliant and really, really good. And the whole soundtrack works well with the tone, with the story, it moves it forward. Overall, I'd say it's definitely a good watch and very interesting from a creative and artistic point of view, what it gives you and what it makes you think about and where to go with sound, especially with this crazy no cutting at all. And yeah, have a good listen, see what you think and see what you can take away from it. No spectacular moments really, except for the first flying scene where he goes up in the air and there's helicopters and stuff exploding and things, but it's relatively standard, and I think the art of this sound is more in the small nitty gritty bits and what you hear and what you don't hear and why, and that's why it's pretty good. And my favourite surprise of the film was Zach Galifianakis, who was real surprised to see him playing so well, a good character, and nice, because I do like him, but I think he's typecast too often, so it was lovely to see him in a different role. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it.